What's at stake in this specific situation? What's at risk? What's the realistic impact of potential errors? And let's be real. If we make a little mistake, is that the end of the world?
Welcome to the Free Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Gary Miles.
I stood in a Baltimore courthouse bathroom, adjusting my tie for the 5th time before facing one of the state's most feared attorneys. Despite graduating top of my class and clerking at federal court, my stomach was in knots. Why? Because I thought I had to be absolutely perfect to win. But here's the shocking truth I've learned after 40 years as a trial lawyer. The attorneys who try to be perfect are the ones who lose the most cases. And the winners, they've mastered something completely different. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to show you why perfectionism is sabotaging your practice and how embracing strategic imperfection will make you a more powerful advocate than you ever imagined. I'm Gary Miles. Welcome to the Free Lawyer. I've spent 4 decades in courtrooms, including over 30 years as managing partner of a successful litigation firm. I've seen brilliant attorneys crippled by perfectionism, and average ones achieve extraordinary results by embracing their humanity and their authenticity. Today, you'll discover the counterintuitive secret that transformed my practice and can revolutionize yours. Let's first talk about the perfectionism trap. Perfectionism can absolutely destroy your practice in so many different ways. First, there's decision paralysis. We spend so much time working on things to make them just perfect, trying to make our mind up about our next strategy and thinking, but what if that's wrong? What if that doesn't work? We spend 12 hours on what should take 2. We just get paralyzed in what we're working on. We can't bring it to a conclusion. We keep looking at the pleading to see if we made a mistake. We keep analyzing our argument to see if we can make it better, well past the point of making any notable or important changes. And our perfectionism also creates amnesia about our successes. I won a series of trucking cases in a row, and trucking cases are hard to win. But I won a bunch of cases in a row, but I still doubted myself. Why? Because of my perfectionism. It made me wonder if I really was as good as I was supposed to be. And when we do make a mistake, our reaction is such incredible overreaction. We all of a sudden look at the document we prepared as being just terrible, our brief as being a mess, and we over-respond after a minor mistake. And when we get constructive feedback from a mentor, a partner, a colleague, we get so defensive, don't we? Because we feel like we're being insulted and attacked. And it affects us in so many ways. We have sleep issues, headaches, digestive problems, but worse than that, we feel stressed and overwhelmed. We're not productive because we take so long to get things done because we're trying to make them so perfect. We lose faith in ourselves, which affects our ability to be truly successful. Once we stop believing in ourselves, our chances of success are that much worse. It affects our relationships with our clients because we posture and pretend. We put on this false air of perfection when inside we're really questioning ourselves, and our clients can see right through it. I had a case that was one of the very best cases I ever tried. It was a workers' comp case. And the only evidence I had on my side was inferential. I was trying to prove that my client was discharged because he filed a workers' comp case. It wasn't a workers' comp claim. It was a retaliation or wrongful discharge case. And I had inferential evidence. And I presented it so well and so beautifully and so powerfully that the jury ruled my way quickly on every count and gave me every dollar I was asking. But after a post-trial motion was filed, the judge threw it out because he said there was no evidence. And what I learned from that is you can prepare for a case flawlessly and you can still lose. But I've also seen cases where I made mistakes and I still won. See, the key is not trying to be perfect, because that doesn't guarantee success or the best success. In fact, the harder you try to be just perfect, the more likely you are to have self-doubt, to question yourself, to have hesitancy. The best you can do is prepare your case as well as you can, to just focus on your effort and see that you've done a good job for your client. What I strive for instead of perfection is excellence, and it's a true game changer. Perfection requires flawless, error-free performance, and we all know that's simply impossible. But excellence is high-quality work that serves our clients' needs. When we focus on serving our clients, when we focus on getting their answers in time, when we're human with them, when we're authentic, when sometimes you're willing to say, I'm not sure, let me get back to you. I don't know the answer to that. Or we have different strategies. I'm not sure which one is the best. I'm trying to figure that out. When we're actually authentic and human with our clients, we have better relationships. I remember a case I had against a really, really amazing attorney in Baltimore who was very inflammatory, did all sorts of inappropriate things in the courtroom, could always get away with it because he had a wonderful manner. Everybody loved him. In that case, I filed 7 mistrial motions and every one was denied. But despite all the efforts by the other attorney, I still won the case. And, the lesson to me is just focus on effective representation. Don't focus on trying to be perfect. And what I've learned, the advantage of authenticity is when we acknowledge our limitations, we build credibility, whether it's with the judge or the jury or with our client. But trying to profess an air of perfection, acting like we know it all when we don't, just smells. People see right through it. They know it's not truthful. They know it's not accurate. They know it's not authentic. If you recognize yourself in any of these stories, you're not alone. I work with successful attorneys every day who are trapped by perfectionism. If you'd like to explore how to break free and to build authentic confidence in your practice, I'm offering complimentary coaching consultations, and the link is in the show notes below. So let's talk about what I like to call strategic imperfection, where we don't actually try to be perfect, but we try to get the best result through our best efforts. So I follow these 3 questions that I ask myself all the time. What's at stake in this specific situation? What's the issue? What's the outcome we're looking for? What's at risk? That's the first question. The second question is, what level of preparation serves my client's actual needs? Now, if I'm filing a brief with the Supreme Court of the United States, that requires a higher level of preparation than when we're preparing a very simple motion to compel for failure to answer interrogatories. That requires a much lower level of preparation. What actually serves my client's needs? What would they want to pay me for? Where do they want me to spend my time? That's the second question. And the third question is, what's the realistic impact of potential errors? And let's be real. If we make a little mistake, is that the end of the world? What is the realistic impact of some mistake, some error? And, humility is such an important component of confidence. I remember a case I had in Howard County, Maryland, with someone who was really the head of the bar there. He was the lawyer in that county. And I kept calling him Mr. And he corrected me. He said, look, you're a lawyer just as I am. If I call you Gary, you should call me Hugh. Call me by my first name, just like I do you. You're entitled to the same respect. And I learned a lot about that. Being deferential was not important, was not helpful. I was entitled to respect from him. And he gave it to me, and he was humble enough to do that. But at the same time, there are times when you need to be authentic, that you don't know the answers or that you're not perfect. One other way this pops up is how we recover from defeats. In the beginning of my career, when I had a defeat, wow, I would beat myself up something terribly and my confidence would be destroyed. So I came up with a 4-step process I recommend to you. The first is, if you have a setback, a hurdle, an obstacle, defeat, try following these 4 steps. First, identify what went well. What specific technique, strategy, decision, approach. What was good about the matter, how you handled it? What was something that you're pleased with? The second is to acknowledge what didn't work out well without personalizing, without blaming yourself, without calling yourselves names, but just be factual and say what didn't work so well. And the third step is to determine what you'll do differently next time. When you have a future case, what adjustments will you make? And finally, recognizing factors outside your control. I remember trying a case very late in my career. It was a very simple auto tort. The facts of the accident were pretty clear. The other lawyer, the defense lawyer, pretty much didn't contest liability. He didn't admit liability, but it wasn't a big fight. We were all focused on damages. And the jury found for the defendant. They found no liability on our part. And all liability rested with the plaintiff, and I got no award, no judgment. And I was shocked. But I learned that I don't really have a lot of power over the jury. They're picked because they don't know anything about injuries, or they're not lawyers, they're not doctors, they're not claims managers. They're not familiar with the case. They're picked because they really don't know things. And the decisions they make are sometimes inexplicable. But I have no control over the jury and what goes on in that room. The only power I have is over how I present my case and what I can learn from it, and what I can do differently and better next time. The other important component of this is how we treat ourselves. Self-compassion is so important. I don't know about you, but I beat myself up something terribly sometimes. I talk to myself so harshly and mean. And this is what I would suggest. Treat yourself with the same understanding you would offer to some colleague, some other attorney you're friends with. How would you speak to that attorney? Speak to yourself the same way. And ask yourself, when you're beating yourself up, would you speak to a junior associate you are mentoring the same way you're speaking to yourself? We all do make mistakes, and they really aren't the end of the world. There's always a solution. There's always a strategy. There's always a comeback. But don't beat yourself up consistently and terribly. Consider how you would speak to someone else who told you that story and admitted to making that mistake. What would be your attitude with that person? And what I found is that authentic confidence, not perfection, authentic confidence is very powerful, very attractive, very honest, and very credible. When you acknowledge your limitations, you actually strengthen your credibility. If a client asks you a question, you don't know the answer, and you say, I'm not sure, I want to think about that and get back to you. That builds your credibility. And admitting that you're not perfect is simply, it's okay. And, I've learned for me, when I let go of my perfectionistic thinking, that allows me to focus entirely on how to represent my client effectively, rather than worrying about how I appeared. Do I look good? Do I appear like the best attorney? And when we think so much about how we appear or worry about how we look, it's just a distraction. It creates stress. Our focus should be on how effective we can represent our client. And that creates authenticity. I tried a really, really difficult defamation case arising out of sexual harassment. My client had complained about sexual harassment of a coworker, and they fired her and then said she stole the company computer. And I was completely outmatched in the case. It was a big company, a very cocky, arrogant, smug, little in stature, president of the company, hired a great lawyer, a great law firm, and they were very, very difficult. We won everything in the case in addition to punitive damages, and best of all, the company president was fired. And I spoke to the judge afterwards, and I said, I'm very pleased with the result. I was a little surprised at how good it was. He said, I wasn't, because he said, you were so authentic with the jury. You weren't full of bluster and bravado, but you had a quiet, honest authenticity. And what that did was build credibility for you and your client with the jury. So I suggest you try to embrace the fact that you can be imperfect, and that will make you more powerful. In a number of ways. It creates safety for you to take calculated risks. Sometimes you can take that chance, try a risk. You've weighed it out, and maybe the upside is real big and it's worth the chance. And you won't be afraid if you lose by saying, I blew it or I made a mistake, because it's okay to try something new. And you'll have a wall of safety around you when you take that chance. It builds deeper and better client relationships. Our clients aren't stupid. They can see through our false bravado, our arrogance, our know-it-all attitude. When we're authentic and human and acknowledge our limitations and acknowledge some things we don't know, that actually builds deeper client relationships. Our problem solving is improved because we aren't stuck in that decision paralysis. We can just analyze and do what we think is best without always second guessing it. But the most important thing is that it releases anxiety and stress and allows you to focus on your case without worrying about whether you're perfect. When I got rid of the need for flawless performance, I reconnected with what drew me to law. And that's solving complex problems, making meaningful difference in clients' lives. See, when you let go of that perfectionism, you'll find you reconnect with your purpose. And when you're connected with your purpose, you're much more fulfilled and freer and happier. Here's what I want you to remember. The most critical verdict in your career isn't delivered by a judge or a jury. It's the one you render about yourself every single day. And after 40 years in law, I can tell you with absolute certainty that the attorneys who acknowledge their humanity, complete with strengths, limitations, and growth areas, bring something far more valuable to their clients than perfectionism ever could. They bring an authentic presence. They bring clear judgment, prompt work, and the courage to advocate fearlessly. Your imperfections are not obstacles to overcome. They are actually your greatest professional strengths waiting to be unleashed. If you're ready to transform your relationship with perfectionism and to build the kind of authentic confidence that wins cases and transforms practices, I invite you to schedule a complimentary coaching consultation with me. We will discuss your specific challenges and create a roadmap for your breakthrough. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, or subscribe to the YouTube channel, or follow my podcast for more content that will liberate your practice. And feel free to send me an email or drop a comment. Tell me about your own perfectionism challenges. Remember this: excellence does not require perfection, and your imperfections may be exactly what make you extraordinary. Have a great day today. Remember to let go of that need to be perfect. Try to be authentic. Try to be human. Acknowledge your limitations. And as always, please be well, be safe, and be free.